Good morning, Broncos fans. Hope everyone's having a wonderful morning. Grab your coffee, and we will talk Broncos here on Legends of Mile High. I am your host, Thomas Hall, and we're going to be talking a little bit about free agency and some big news about Courtland Sutton and Jeudy. So hang tight. We'll get into that in just a little bit. But if you are joining, don't forget to like the show. And don't forget to subscribe to Mile High Huddle YouTube so you can get these alerts early in the morning to wake you up so that you can join into the discussion. We talk current events and we talk history on the show. And I got a little bit of both that will be blended together today for a free agency. But in the meantime, I just want to first start out with the good news. If you didn't want to trade Jeudy or Courtland Sutton. So Mike Klis came out, and I'm going to find his quote right now and read it to you. So if you're a fan of these two players, then you're going to be happy with this news. So Mike Klis came in this morning or yesterday and evening and said, and I'll quote, while lots of teams have called on Broncos wide receivers Jeudy and Sutton, including some who've been very aggressive, it doesn't appear Denver is interested in moving them, per source. That has been the speculation for quite some time. Many of the insiders have been talking about how either one or both of Sutton or Jeudy would be moved in this offseason to free up some cap space, get a player, or perhaps some draft capital. And many people didn't really care for it, including myself. I was not a big fan of moving on either of them. Basically, Jeudy really is the number one wide receiver, and that would be a imprudent move, if that's a word, to move him when he was really coming into his own towards the end of the season, and bit of a hopefully look into the future of how good he was going to be. And then also Sutton is, he's a valuable wide receiver who has really kind of struggled, but he's still at 800 yards, and his contract is not terrible. In fact, it's better if you're going to move on to him next year, as Scott and I talked about on the Mile High Insiders this week. So there's a few good reasons to be happy about it. Plus, there was some injury concerns in the Broncos wide receiver core. So to move on from a couple and be sitting there with just Patrick and KJ Hamler really was a bit concerning to me. So to me, that's some pretty good news. And I think that having a really solid wide receiver core together to start the season and really build this offense and get going and then make some decisions after the season, I think is a big deal. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today, and a little bit about some evaluation of free agency. Let's jump into the chat here with David Youngkin. David, thank you for coming in this morning. He says, "Morning Broncos country. If they stay, it will benefit the whole team." Absolutely. Yeah, I agree, David. I appreciate you coming in this morning because that is true. Stuart Sanchez is coming in saying good morning. So thank you for that. Glad that you're here. And David Youngkin's coming back in under Sean's leadership. He says they will have a good year. And I believe that too. I believe that the offense is going to be so much better. And we got the man, Michael Ronquillo, coming in with some Facebook stars. I appreciate the support. That is, wonderful to hear and see on this fine St. Patrick's Day morning. So good, happy St. Patrick's Day to everyone in case you are celebrating that today. We got Clayton Huron coming in saying good morning, Broncos country. Happy St. Patrick's Day, guys. Smash the like button and share. Yeah, thank you for that, Clayton. It's good to see you here this morning. I really appreciate you being here. It's always a good conversation with everybody on the show, so thank you so much. Now we have James Dasso coming in from Facebook. Man, I appreciate you being here, James. Thank you so much. I know it's early morning, but let's grab some coffee and talk a little bit about the Broncos. So we have James asking a question. If there's anything the team needs to focus on in the offseason, what position can they improve on, if not already? Well, that's a great question, because there are positions still out there that have some weaknesses, right? But the fact of the matter is the Broncos have spent most of their free agency money, right? So I think they're going to be sitting around $7-8 million under the cap, and they typically tend to keep that throughout the season and hopefully roll that over. So I don't know if they're going to make any big free agent spends after the first 3 days. Now, I could be wrong. They may do some restructures, or there may be another release that we didn't see coming, which would be interesting. But to free up some space. But to answer your question, I think one big piece after they've addressed most of the offensive line is still center. Center is a position that they need to address somehow. I wrote about how Sean Payton may see Cushenberry as the starter because he likes that type of center, even though Cushenberry's really struggled. And it looks like they are going to be going into the draft season without signing a center. I was hoping they would get a solid center, and there's still a few out there. If you want to take a risk on a couple older guys, you've got Rodney Hudson still sitting out there. You've got Ben Jones still sitting out there. They're both 33 years old. They could bring them in, hopefully on a team friendly type contract. But at this point, it doesn't look like they're going to do that. They re-signed PJ Locke, so that kind of helps the depth of safety. I know some people were really hoping to bring in a new, a vet safety, but I like Caden Stearns. I think he had a great rookie season, and he had some injury struggles last season, but I think he's, up and coming, pretty good safety. So hopefully he can make that leap into a more of a premier status, so to speak. So that's another area that I don't think that they are going to address. So really, I think they're done other than the draft. I do believe they're going to draft a center. They have to draft a center regardless of what they do in the free agency period, because Cushenberry is an unrestricted free agent after this season. So they're going to have to make some plans. I don't know if Wattenberg really fits their plans. I don't know if Sean Payton likes a center who's smallish, really athletic, kind of fit the more of the zone blocking scheme, that mobile type of center. Although, he did have a couple smaller centers during his time, but typically it was a big kind of mauling type center that fit. So I don't know if Wattenberg's going to be in their future plans. They very well like him, but I don't know. So we'll see about that, but they're going to have to draft a center. So there's a few positions still left, but the thing of it is you can't fill every single position with stars or free agents, because with the cap the way it is, you can't do it. It's pretty tough, and unless they're going to make some restructures, which I don't see many that they can do right now, because most of their contracts are pretty good this year, right? Their caps hits aren't terrible. I know Russell Wilson has a pretty big cap hit this season, but if you restructure him, it's going to make his later cap hits even worse. So I think they're, I mean, they might grab a real cheap option here and there, but I think they're pretty much done until the draft. But thank you for that question. We got other people coming in here. We got Jason O'Neill coming in saying, good morning, Thomas. And we've got Dom coming in saying, good morning, Thomas Scott in Broncos country. How are you all liking the weather this morning in Albuquerque? Rain now, rain now this morning, snow. Yeah, I know. I woke up this morning, I saw snow out there, and I was just disappointed because I'm so ready for spring. It's been so nice here. And then all of a sudden it started to get bad weather. And yeah, there's quite a bit of snow out there for the Albuquerque Rio Rancho area. But yeah, it's I'm not a big fan of it. Moving from Maine, I lived in Maine for a little over a decade, and I'm ready for no snow. So thanks for coming in this morning, Dom. Appreciate it. We got Michael Ronquillo's coming back in with a Jared Stidham comment. QB Jared Stidham is excited to play under Sean Payton as the backup quarterback. Yeah, and who wouldn't be, right? Who wouldn't be excited to play for Sean Payton based on his track record on offense? I mean, the guy has a proven track record of having great offenses. In fact, I looked at all of his scoring offenses, and his offensive scored over 500 points more times than they scored under 300. So under 400. So that's a pretty good track record. So I can see why he's excited. Hopefully he doesn't get much playing time because hopefully Russell Wilson will stay healthy and play back to the caliber that he was playing before last year. So let's talk a little bit more about free agency. Now that we've kind of got this whole trading the wide receiver core behind us, right? Uh, that's I think was a key to keep that wide receiver team together at least for one more year because most most importantly, this is a year that they need to evaluate everyone on offense and whether or not they're going to be the future of this team, right? You got to evaluate whether Russell Wilson was an aberration, was an outlier last year, or he actually is on the decline and isn't going to turn around. But you also got to evaluate whether Sutton and even Jeudy. I mean, Jeudy had his struggles. So I think it's a good idea to keep this together. And if you're building through free agency like they were doing, why would you want to weaken your offense even more if you're spending all this money on the offensive line to help the offense get better? And I always like to go in this show. I always like to go back and look at some of the past things that happened in the Broncos. And back in their first Super Bowl run, right back in 1997, when they had that incredible team with the incredible offensive line, they really used free agency well. Now, I think that Mike Shanahan, his downfall was he wasn't really great at drafting often, and so he used a lot of free agents to kind of cover that up. But after a while, that kind of come back to haunt him. They were making some deals that really weren't valuable to the team, and it kind of cost him. So you got to be careful with free agency. You don't want to be bad at drafting and try and fill in all of your weaknesses with free agency. But you do need to use free agency in order to fill out your roster. And I think they did that. And back in 1995, they had a very good core of excellent players back then. I mean, they had Elway, they had Sharp, they had Zimmerman, they had Crockett and Atwater, and those were some key players. But they filled in some really important positions along the way. They went out and got Schlereth as a guard. They got McCaffrey, and they went and brought Tyrone Braxton back to play safety in 1995. They went and got Alfred Williams and Mike Lodish, who were key players in that Super Bowl run, and they got them in 1996. And then they really finished their team out solidly by going out in 97 and getting Tony Jones, who was a trade, not a free agent pickup. And you got Howard Griffith, Keith Traylor, Neil Smith. You got all these, Darren Gordon. They were all key players in that Super Bowl run, and those were most of them were free agent pickups, right? But the other thing too, you got to think about is some of their young players they were developing, so they weren't totally giving up on these young players. So Tom Nalen, obviously, who I love and think should be in the Hall of Fame, he was a late round pick in '94 and developed into one of the best centers of all time, in my opinion. They also had Alan Aldrich, who was a key player in that first Super Bowl. They developed him as a draft pick, so they had a nice mix, and I think that's what when I look on paper anyway, I kind of feel like the Broncos have that started this season because they do have some core players. I don't think they're all Hall of Famers, of course, like that team was in the late '90s. I mean, that was loaded with some Hall of Famers, and I think there's going to be at least one more that goes into the Hall of Fame from that team. But they have Russell Wilson, and I know everybody was really disappointed in his play last year, but his trajectory was a Hall of Fame player. And it probably still is, unless he really tanks for the next 3 or 4 years, and then there'll be some question marks. But the way he had been playing the first 10 years, he was destined for the Hall of Fame. And then we got Pat Surtain. I mean, he's one of the best in the league. You got Justin Simmons, who's one of the better safeties in the league as well. You got some pretty good players. Miners, I really like some good key core players that are sitting there, and they have some young guys that I think they're going to bring up. Like Dulcich is a great example of somebody who's young, who's going to hopefully bud into a star. I mean, still a question mark. We'll be looking back in a few years to see how that went. I think Mathis is another one, and then hopefully like Henningsen and a couple other guys can kind of come on. But when you look at this free agency period, it feels like kind of that early free agency period back in the 90s where they really solidified some positions. Now, granted, when you look at this, on paper is always better than when we actually see the season unfold. So I'm just saying this as a projection, looking at it on paper. I mean, these guys could not pan out, and hopefully that's not the case. That would be very disappointing, obviously. But they filled in some key positions. So right tackle Mike McGlinchey has come in. That's an incredible signing if it pans out, because they've been looking for a right tackle forever, it seems. They brought in Powers. I love that pick. And I know Michael Ronquillo's coming in with a question about who is my favorite free agent pickup for the Broncos. And I really feel like it's Ben Powers. I liked him. I didn't think they would get him because I thought they would have to spend a lot of money on a right tackle, because that was a very important position to shore up. And I thought they'd have to spend a little less on the guard position. So when he was signed, I was really kind of over the moon, so to speak, because I like him. I mean, he's got the right attitude. He's big, powerful, and you look at his performance last season. He didn't give up any. I don't think he gave up a sack last season. So he's an incredible player. I think he's probably the top of my list for free agent pickups. But I like the other ones as well. I think everyone that they picked up was even if they overpaid, they were pretty decent signings to fill in positions of need. David Youngkin's coming back in saying, do you think that the backup quarterback could be the quarterback of the future? No, I don't. I do not think Stidham is the future. He was supposed to be the future when the Patriots picked him up, and he's just bounced around the league. I mean, he's an okay player. I think you can get, if your starter goes down, you can get some solid play from him, in spots, but he just doesn't seem to me like the future of the team. The future of the team at quarterback, if Russell Wilson fails, is not on the team right now. So they're going to have to draft somebody or, make another trade somehow. I don't know if that's the case, but yeah, I like Stidham as a backup, but that's about it. But yeah, I mean, I think he can come in and play admirably if needed. But yeah, don't expect him to be the next quarterback of the Broncos going forward. Chase Wellner coming in. Thank you, Chase. I don't know if I've seen you on here before, but I appreciate you coming in, saying good morning, and then his thoughts on center. That's his question is thoughts on center. Yeah, I was just talking about the center position, right? That's the one question that was out there. What do we have? What do we think that the Broncos need to fill in? And that's one of them. I thought they would go after a center in the offseason. I think that's an important position to, shore up. I think Cushenberry's played poorly. Now, I will say this. Cushenberry came in as a rookie and started. And it's tough to come in as a rookie offensive lineman, especially at center, and play well. But he didn't play well at all. He was the worst center, I guess, in the league that year, if you believe some of the evaluations and whatnot. But you could see it when he played. He wasn't very good. So I kind of gave him a pass, being a rookie, kind of thrown into the fire. He did improve, to about middle of the road the next season, and then he fell off a cliff again this year. And I think a lot of it had to do with, it was a mess on offense. And, the scheme didn't really fit him. So that probably didn't help. But you're going to have to see a major jump in production and improvement from him this season for any validation that this decision not to go after a center was the right one. So I think, you sometimes you see these coaches come in and they like somebody coming out of the draft. And when you look at Cushenberry's evaluation and profile and kind of stuff coming out of the draft, he fits what Sean Payton likes. Now, did he play like his evaluation? No, I don't think he did. He's a bigger guy, but he gets pushed around too easy. So I think that some of the evaluation was good for college, but it didn't really work for him in the NFL. So, but sometimes when coaches come in, they think that they can make that player fit their scheme and be better. So I think Sean Payton might be thinking that, like, we're not going to spend a lot of money on center because he kind of likes him, thinks he's going to make it better. I don't know what's going to happen. Man, I really, really hope that he does improve, because I loved Cushionberry. I thought he was going to be a steal in the third round. So just for my own purposes, it would be nice for him to really improve, but it would be very beneficial for the Broncos. But at center, I think, all that's left, there's really nothing of excitement left for me in the center pool. There's older guys, some young guys who don't haven't really proven themselves. So it's going to be tough. I think they're drafting a center though. I think they will be using, if one is there, one that they like. Obviously, you can't ever kind of project that this center is going to be, or this player is going to be there in the draft, because you never know what someone else is going to do, another team. But if there's a center there that they like in the third round, I think they're going to draft one. They have to prepare for the future. So yeah, thank you for that question. And Keith Brugman's coming in asking a question about sacks. So he says, looking at our roster as of today, who do you predict to be our sack leader? Yeah, that's a great question, man. I would like to say Zach Allen, right? Because he needs to replace the Draymond Jones interior pressure. I would love for him to be the sack leader, really. And the reason why I say that is because he typically can stay fairly healthy. The other edge rushers, Randy Gregory and Baron Browning, have not been able to stay healthy. So that's the only reason. I think if all things equal, everybody stays healthy for most of the season, it's going to be Randy Gregory. I think he's going to, he really was on fire to start the season last year until he got hurt. But if I'm going to be a realist, and I know that he hasn't ever played a full season, I'm going to go with Zach Allen. I think it was a solid pickup. Like I said, on these other shows, I was disappointed that Draymond Jones wasn't re-signed. But when you look at Zach Allen and what he brings, it's not a huge downgrade, I don't think, in pass rushing. So I think that's a good signing. But also, he's 25. He's going to be coming into his prime, and this might be his best season to date if he stays healthy. So he could get 8, 9 sacks this season, and that might be enough to lead the team. Only because everybody else is not staying healthy. Now they could draft somebody that I don't know about yet, but I don't see anybody coming in and doing anything much better. So yeah, I'm going to go with Zach Allen, only because the injury bug. So thank you for that. Now, when we look at some of these other pickups, McGlinchey, Powers, those are shoring up the offensive line. We got, Allen, we've got, Burton as a fullback. I think that's a key signing. I like that signing. One, he's got a championship mentality coming in from the Chiefs, who, obviously as a Bronx fan, I do not like, but they just won the Super Bowl. So you got to give some credit where credit is due. Hopefully he can come in with that championship mentality, physicality, bringing a little bit more to the team than what we've seen. That's a good signing as well. But, the year before, they also brought some key players in. DJ Jones and Quan Williams are solid players. And I think they're going to have a pretty good season if they can stay healthy as well. And then, of course, what I just talked about, Randy Gregory. So they really started to fill out in free agency some of those key roles. And now they just have to go out and find somebody in the draft that will hopefully, these later round picks who will hopefully hit. And that's the real key. If you look at a lot of these teams who have been successful for several years, it's because they were able to hit on later round picks who became elite. Those are very few. That happens very, very infrequent, right? Because picking up an elite player, an impact player later in the draft is very, very hard. But if you look at the Kansas City Chiefs, they found Tyreek Hill, they found Travis Kelce, they found some of these late round guys who popped and became very valuable to their team. And that's what the Broncos have to do this season. They don't have any early picks, so they have to hit on at least one player somehow, get lucky, find a player who develops into an impact player, and then I think they can fill in next year with some other players, especially early on in the draft. So I think this offseason went incredibly well. And like I said, Ben Powers is my favorite. I got some questions about McGlinchey. I'm hoping that those questions are, answered this year. And then he, plays even better than I hope. But many of the other ones were pretty solid. And if not, they weren't spectacular. I'm like Perrine is a solid signing, not a great signing. And I think he fits what they're wanting to do. But yeah, I think the Broncos really did a great job this offseason. Now, again, we need to see that play out on the field. But if they can match that free agency period of back when, when I was a youngster watching the Broncos in the late 90s, I think they've got something. So let's keep our fingers crossed that everybody stays healthy. So we got Clayton Huron coming in asking me for a grade. What would you grade our team? Offense, defense, and special teams. Yeah, it's funny. I don't do grades very often, but because it's so subjective. But I'll take a crack at it. I think, well, the defense, I don't think got worse. I think they got a little bit better. So I would grade their defense. Well, it's hard to say because I really like what Evero was doing. I'm not as big a fan as Vance Joseph, so I think they will take a little bit of a step back. I would say that they're sitting at a B for defense right now. Hopefully it comes together really well and they all gel and stay healthy. And if that's the case, if they can stay healthy, then that grade might move up. The offense is the big question mark for me because of Russell Wilson, right? If he can snap back, like I think he will, they're going to have, and Sean Payton is going to be able to help facilitate that. They're going to have a much better offense. I mean, their offense was an F last year, and if they could move it up to a C, that's a huge improvement. But right now, looking on paper, how they've improved the team and how they're going to be a much different offense, I'd give that a B as well. But that's based on Russell Wilson being able to come back into his regularly scheduled effectiveness as a quarterback instead of what happened last year. And then special teams, that's a huge question mark, right? The Broncos haven't had a good special teams in, I can't even remember, maybe the 90s. It seems like it was forever. It was longer than, waiting for a right tackle to come around. But, they have a great set of coaches. I think Sean Payton brought in the right coaches for the team. I think that Montreal Washington is probably going to lose the kickoff duties at least to the cornerback Tremont Smith that came in. So that might improve. It's the coverage that I'm really worried about. Is their coverage going to be better? I don't know. It's hard to grade that right now. I'm just going to give them a C because I don't know. They've just been so bad that it's hard to be optimistic. I guess I was very optimistic with Stooks, and he really just stunk it up. So yeah, right now I'm not going to get too excited, right? I like the team. I like the way it's developed, but if I'm going to get too excited, I got too excited last year, and I'm just going to wait for the first couple of games to see how it goes. And I'm going to be out there at training camp. So we'll see if I'm sure it's going to be a much different vibe, much different practices at training camp. So I'll give you some reports, and maybe my optimism will change as I watch training camp. So that'll be great. Dom's coming in and asking me, are you happy with re-signing PJ? It was PJ Locke. Absolutely. Yeah, I like PJ Locke. He's not an elite player, but he's a solid depth player. So I was happy that they brought him back just because he's got familiarity with the team. He plays really hard. He made some really good key plays last season. So, I like the signing. I like that he's going to be a good depth player, and I think he's a pretty good special teams player too. So yeah, I am happy with that. And then Keith Brugman's coming back in asking, where's the biggest need for depth on the roster currently? What position do the Broncos need to still target free agency or the draft? Yeah, running back has no depth. I mean, there's just nobody there. They brought in one running back, and I think that's the biggest need right now for depth. I don't know if I think they think Perrine is going to be the starter right now, unless they draft somebody who really comes on. But yeah, that's the big question mark for me. I think they need to go out and address at least one more player just to have in that room, right? Because they've lost pretty much everybody to free agency, and then Javonte Williams is, I'm worried that he's going to come back at all, let alone this season in play. So that's a big concern for me. I think they're going to have to target that position in free agency or the draft or both. So yeah, it's got to be running back at this point. So yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And then we got Bradley Conger coming in with a comment, which I think is really, really true. The team will develop into a more physical, punch you in the mouth type team, and that's exciting. Yeah, I think so too. The way it's going, the people they brought in, it seems like that's the mentality they want. They really want to be physical up front. And the tight end, the fullback, the running back, those folks that they brought in, not just on the offensive line, really indicates that they're going to be that physical team. And I like it because, we've we watched the NFL kind of evolve into more, offense with the speed and finesse, and then you've got a lot of these smaller players coming in on defense to kind of, I would say, match that speed and finesse. And if you're going to change it up like that and just be really powerful and physical up front and make some like you said, bully people around, that's going to change it up a little bit. Now, do I think that that's all they're going to be? No, I think they're going to pass plenty. I think that Sean Payton's going to put some plenty of the onus on Russell Wilson to be better and play better. And I think that you'll see definitely some passing, but when it comes time for the Broncos to run and they need to run the ball, I think they're going to be able to do that effectively with the pickups that they made, as long as Cushionberry makes some improvement. If you have a really weak link, it's going to be tough to really run at will. But other than that, I think you're right. I think the physicality is something we didn't see at all last year on the offense. So uh, that would be a pleasant surprise. So, all right. I don't know if I see any more questions in the chat, so I'm going to wrap up the show. I really appreciate it. We got to have a couple people coming in here before we wrap it up. We got Michael coming back in. Thank you from Facebook, saying great show today. Thomas Holland, legend of Mile High. Go Broncos and Buckham. Yeah, thank you, Michael. And Albert Knopper's coming in. I think Peyton did great in free agency. Solid A grade for me. All right, thank you, Albert. I appreciate that. And then Clayton Huron's coming in saying, smash that like button on the way out. Please do. Please smash the like button. Support the show any way that you can. And let other people know we have a little bit of different show here to talk a little history and whatnot. So let other people know, join in. And with that, I just want to say thank you for joining and have a great St. Patrick's Day. So thank you very much and go Broncos.